How many liters does it take to surf the silver tsunami? Do we want to surf the silver tsunami? What does it mean to surf the silver tsunami? What the heck is a silver tsunami? Okay. Hi, I'm Carly, and that's what I want to talk about. Okay. There are those questions of how many liters does it take, right? What even is the silver tsunami? What does all of this mean? Why are we here? And just spend some time because I do believe this will be the first of multiple story times like this as I go along this journey of founding the Rural Transition Academy. And I want to give a window into the journey. I also, for myself, want to be able to look back on this almost like a video diary of the process because this is one of the coolest seasons of my life. And there have been many, many earlier seasons that are basically culminating into Rural Transition Academy. And so this particular conversation, this initial look into the process, um, I am about to file the LLC. Okay, that's where I'm at in the journey of founding this new company and this I would even go so far as to say this mission of reversing the erosion of rural food access. Okay, right? It's been eroding for decades. We know that. It's documented. Not only is the Rural Transition Academy intent on stopping that erosion, but also reversing it, right? Regenerating the soil such that we can no longer see a decline in rural independent grocery stores, but that we can see that number growing, right? Because we're keeping all of the stores that we have because they're, when the owner's ready to step away, they're making successful transitions. We're also seeing the effects of the efforts of adding new stores because our existing stores are so stable that the new stores show up in the numbers like, look, there's more than there were last year, right? Like that phenomenon. That's my why. Okay. Reversing the erosion of rural food access. I want to see rural independent grocery stores stay where they are. I want to see more of them. And the truth is, I'm quite future oriented and I look to the future a lot and I see that what's coming for rural America is actually really exciting. There's a trend that is in the making at this time, right? We don't necessarily need to see what's going on top of the soil to understand that there are things happening underneath that are laying the groundwork for more people desiring a rural lifestyle. Okay. And so what that means is economic prosperity for rural areas. The people are coming, the demand is coming, the people are headed that way. And the truth is, right now, there are a lot of places where if a big chunk of people moved to that area, it would basically be the equivalent of like best case scenario and worst case scenario all at the same time. Okay. There's like a readiness stage that we're in right now where it's time to lay the groundwork for what's coming. And that is part of where the Rural Transition Academy is coming from, is that right now is time to get our people stationed by the door, to greet our guests who are on their way. And so I see this future and it's so compelling to me and it's so rich and alive and connected and living at the pace of nature and humans thriving and eating healthy foods that this earth gave us, right? So, like, there's so much beauty and humanity in this vision that I have of this future. And, I'm an entrepreneur by spirit. When I am envisioning this future that doesn't exist yet, I personally find that to be incredibly energizing because I know that I can build stuff. So I am in a journey. Like I said, I want to like let you guys in on this process and like as I go through it, as it unfolds into the physical, which is inevitable, um, to be able to speak to the human version of like giving birth to something new, to like solving something or creating something that the world didn't exactly ask for. Okay. Like that self-doubt that can come up in our mind as far as like when we're wanting to create something and put it out into the world. And it's like, yeah, but who asked for that? Who would listen to that? Like nobody asked you to do that. And that little girl, the video where she's got like her yip dick on, and like, did you ask anyone if you could put the yip dick on? And she said, I asked myself. And she freaking meant it because, my life asked me to make this. And maybe the world, like, there's something, a little bit obscure about what it is that I'm proposing, and not necessarily like controversial, just like leading edge, maybe is a good way to put it, if I can dare to be so bold. Um, there is there's a lot of vision in what I'm creating. There's a lot of like the picture on the front of the box is still becoming clear to me at this stage. And every day it reveals itself to me a little bit more. And when I look back at like the last decade of like how the pieces have been revealing themselves, like that's the story that I want to let you in on a little bit today, and just where I'm at in the process and what's coming next. And then to just kind of post these as I go. And yeah, like that just sounded fun to me to do. So here we are, trusting the process. Um, because like I said, this is one of the coolest seasons of my life where I feel like my life asked me to make this thing. And like, what do I mean by that? Well, back in 2016, okay, I had a spiritual awakening, and I'm not going to go into that whole story today, but let's just say like dark night of the soul slash dark night of the ego led to a bit of a moment where I just am like, I'm not going to do my life like this anymore. Show me something different. And I discovered, spirituality at that time. And so this was July of 2016. Starting in about October of 2016, I started to receive, like during my morning meditations, journaling, etc., I started to receive this like very clear message. I now understand that this is called clairaudience, if you're interested, where like my intuition, this message, it just kept saying, your business is ready for you. Your business is ready for you. Your business is ready for you. And it like in a quiet moment where I'm not thinking about anything, I'm, following my breath. I'm like, mind is clear in the quiet. And then I hear like in here, your business is ready for you. Okay. Okay. And me being like the deeply practical, deeply skeptical scientist that I am, like, okay, isn't that interesting? You're saying my business is ready for me. Yes, your business is ready for you. Okay, who should I call? Your business is ready for you. What kind of business is it? Your business is ready for you. Where should I go? What should I do? When should I be? Like all of these questions. Your business is ready for you. That's all it would ever say. And that was a couple months of getting that message. And finally, it was about early December where today's the day. I'm leaving my job. I am going to live on my savings for a year, and I'm gonna see if there's a business that's ready for me because it won't give me any more information. I don't know what to do. But I do know that I could easily live on my savings for a year and then some. And if it doesn't work out, I'll get a job, like I'll travel some, I'll practice my spirituality things that are happening and just see what happens because this message is so insistent and the repetition of it and everything that I'm learning about spirituality, like I feel like I'm single, no kids, I've got savings. Professionally speaking, I can just go get a job if it doesn't work out. Like, I'm ready to take this risk. I'm ready to take this leap of faith, literally. I mean, at the time, like the analogy that was there for me was like letting go of the trapeze so that the guy on the other trapeze can catch you. Like if you can't do a catch if you don't let go, if you just swing on your swing for the rest of your life, like you'll never know. You'll never know. And that was scarier. That was scarier than leaving behind my stable job and seeing if this intuitive message was gonna actually become a thing. Like, is that real? Because maybe, but I just can't see how. But obviously, I believed it enough to give it a chance to work out. So that was December of 2016. I did do some traveling. I had a wonderful time slash like a soul searching beginning of 2017. And it was at the tail end of April of 2017 when my cousin basically texted me like, "Hey, can we talk?" And we had like a little conversation and he sent me a paragraph of like a business vision, let's call it. Like it certainly wasn't a plan. It was like a few sentences of he wanted us to build the best rural grocery store that had ever existed. And it was literally in the boldness of like, he's not just saying he wants to like give it a shot and see what happens. Like, he's like, no, we're aiming for extraordinary. Are you in? And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm in. Let's go. And so, pretty much from the instant, from the outset, that was a hell yes of like, okay, this is it. And that was, I think, the third startup that had approached me in 2017. I was like a magnet for startups and like having conversations with people about what they were building. And it was like in the other ones, I just couldn't see how like that one was specifically for me. Like I'm like, that doesn't have my name on it. Like it's really not suited for me, Like it needs experience I don't have. It doesn't let me use experience that I do have. It's more this and I want it to be more like this. And it just was kind of easy to be like, no, I don't see myself doing that. So to say no to the first couple that approached me, and then as soon as he said best rural grocery store that's ever existed, I was a full body hell yes, like I can do this. And so over the next 10 months, I moved from Texas to Kansas. We remodeled our grocery store, or the building that had used to be a grocery store. It had been sitting vacant for a year and a half, so it was needed some love. And we got that going, opened February of 2018. And we opened our second location in December of 2022. That obviously means that, like, at the time of COVID, like, I was running a grocery store on the front lines of a global pandemic as an essential worker. Like all of a sudden, it was like all of this that like I never signed up for any of that. And yet we're trusting the process because clearly this is what's here, this is what's real, and all we can do is be with it and surf these waves as best we can. And actually, there was a part of me that like kind of lost my train of thought. There was a part of me that the stability that we had reached was kind of bittersweet for me personally, only because, like, on one hand, we worked so freaking hard to get it to that point of like stable and breaking even and like supporting itself, and it's doing it. Look, it's walking all by itself. Like that was such a cool thing. Like it was, I mean, getting that first store to sustainable was like literally the hardest thing I'd ever done. Maybe still is the hardest thing I've ever done. Um, And so, on one hand, I was very proud of what we had accomplished. And on the other hand, I'm a learner, I'm a builder, I'm a strategist, I'm a visionary. So, when things are stable, I feel like it's time for me to move on and solve the next thing and build the next thing. And so, COVID happening when it did, a little over 2 years into our operations, like it it kind of took all the rule book and it threw it out the window. So like it was like a refresh of, we don't know anything. The slate is blank again, and we have to figure it all out, and we have to think on our feet. And like it just it kind of reinvigorated the entire thing for me a little bit. And so it made sense then, once that had all kind of settled back down and like we're kind of like stable in the new normal now. That was when I took a step back from operations and started consulting. And so the starting consulting in 2021 and then opening second location 2022, and then I left our business of the two locations. I left that and did consulting full time beginning at the end of 2023. So like early 2024, I was only a grocery consultant. And meanwhile, like those last couple years of doing both, that was really where the seeds were planted as far as being able and ready and feeling called to do what it is that I'm doing now with like founding Rural Transition Academy and going after this seed money and like getting this thing to be a thing. It needs to exist, it wants to exist. Um, and the seeds for that, I very first heard the phrase silver tsunami from the Rural Grocery Initiative. They hosted a webinar series. I believe it was early 2022, but they had hosted one in 21 that was also kind of like laying the groundwork for this. But the two together were about um, keeping groceries alive, like keeping rural grocery stores being a thing. Like, how do we do that? Because we're losing ground faster than really we're responding. And so, like, what is it that we need to be doing? And so, Rural Grocery Initiative, RGI, they invited me to be a presenter on one of those webinar series about, the keeping alive rural grocery stores. And that was when I first encountered the term silver tsunami. Was as far as like there are 10,000 baby boomers retiring a day, so 70,000 a week, and baby boomers own 2.9 million businesses in the United States. So the silver tsunami, it's definitely not a thing I made up. I meant to look up who coined the term silver tsunami before I started recording this video. That didn't happen. I'll learn about it and I'll tell you in a future video. But when I heard those numbers, I felt, I think the most accurate word for what I felt was overwhelmed by the scale of what I could see coming, because obviously 2.9 million businesses, those aren't all grocery stores, but some of them are. And in some of those cases, that grocery store is the only healthy food access in that geographic area. Like when we look at the map of the United States and look at where people live, most people in the United States live in urban areas. And it is definitely a minority of the population in the United States that live in rural areas. And yet, when we look at the geographic space that urban takes up compared to the geographic space that rural takes up, it's inverted. It's like 95% of the country is rural and like 5% of the country is urban. I don't know if those numbers are exactly accurate. I'm not saying that those numbers are the right numbers, but the gist of like when you think about how many pockets of people live farther away than like 15, 20, 30 minutes from their groceries, from their healthy food, like there's a decent chunk of the population already living in that reality where the USDA would call it a food desert. And as the silver tsunami peaks and then continues to roll on through, this transformation of our US economy slash global economy, because the baby boomer generation is not a US phenomenon, right? Like it was spurred on by World War II, and there are a lot of countries that saw similar population growth after World War II, where there are many countries who have baby boomers. Okay. So as we're talking about the US, like in my mind, like this is really a global trend that as we see our like generational shift, baby boomers aging out of entrepreneurship, how many leaders does it take to surf the wave? And I want to start actually before I get into that, I want to go back to that question of like, should we surf the wave? Like, do we want to? Like, why are we talking about this? Why do we care? And it really is like, when I think about how many food deserts there already are in this country and in the world, and food desert just meaning they live far away from their groceries. Um, when I think of how many there already are, and then I think about the baby boomers aging out of entrepreneurship and how many of those businesses are closing rather than being transitioned, there are new food deserts popping up all over the place. And that thought, it really got under my skin. Like as soon as I heard that from RGI about like silver tsunami, I was introduced to it. These numbers are huge. We already have more food deserts than we can solve, and you're telling me there's about to be a bunch more of them. Okay. And then basically, and this is where again, like there's going to be multiple installations of me trying to get this story out of like where Rural Transition Academy is coming from and the heart and soul that like led me to create it. But in 2022, probably one of the most potent seeds, I maybe even like the radioactive material that got on the seed that had already been planted by learning about silver tsunami. Um, the radioactive material, I attended a rural grocery summit. It's the National Rural Grocery Summit. RGI hosts it every other summer. And the one in 2022, I had seen on the agenda beforehand that there was a breakout session on transition planning, like succession planning. So, we know that all these baby boomers are aging out of entrepreneurship, that they're going to need to transition their store. I was like, that is like one of the most important breakout sessions at the whole conference. And I'm like, big star right next to it. I'll be there. And so that was how I felt about it, was like, this is so important. And obviously, that's why I make a point to attend that session. And at the time that it's time to get started, I'm looking around in the room where like just the session before that I was coming from, it was like literally standing room only, where I had spent the 45 minutes of the session standing against the back wall with people touching both my shoulders, which was definitely not my choice. Okay. We're crammed in there like sardines, got no personal space because there are so many people at this breakout session. That's where I was coming from. I basically had the next session all to myself. There's like six people sitting in the audience in a room that has 100 chairs in it and room for standing room only. And there's like six of us. and three presenters who are each going to spend 15 minutes talking about business succession planning to basically an empty room. Okay. And before they ever said anything, just the fact that the room was empty was so haunting to me because, again, like this is all happening so fast. And this is so important because we're about to see like the rate of the erosion of rural food access, like which is already happening, has been happening for like 40 years. Like we're about to see the rate of erosion skyrocket. And I'm alone in this room, basically. And so each of the three presenters, they went through talking about like, why is this happening? Like, why is this a difficult thing? Like, why is business succession planning so hard? And they all three said the same exact thing that business owners don't want to face it. They just don't want to face it. Well, they don't want to face it. Like all three of them like came to that same conclusion that owners don't want to face it. And the fact that they all three said the same thing, I didn't know what that meant other than how fascinating that they all agree on what the issue is. Like, okay, well, that solves a lot. Like, at least we know what the issue is. Owners don't want to face it. So then why? My natural next question is like, why don't they want to face it? And so after the session was over, I go outside and in the hallway, there's one of the presenters, and I'm like, hey, so, you said, and the others said that like the owners don't want to face this topic of business succession planning. Why? And he was like, I don't know. And I mean, you could tell like he really didn't know. And like almost like he had thought about it and thought about it and thought about it and like, I don't know, like a head scratcher. And so throughout the rest of that day, I found the second presenter. And then that afternoon, I found the third presenter. And I asked them the same question of like, okay, so you all said they don't want to face it. Why? Why is that? Why do you think that is? And the second one and then the third one, they all three said, I don't know. And there are things that happen in life that get under our skin and they start to live inside of us, like they take on a life of their own. And I believe it was that day at the 2022 National Rural Grocery Summit, sitting in a nearly empty room, listening to the single most important session at that entire conference basically by myself, and then hearing that the experts agree on what the problem is and none of them know how to solve it. And at that point, it wasn't at all that I was sitting there thinking, like, well, Mighty Mouse style, like, here I come to save the day. Like, I know how to solve it. Let me solve it for you. Like, it wasn't that at all. Like, I didn't know how to solve it either, right? Like, I had the question, why don't they want to face it? I don't know. And neither do these guys. I don't know. And there was like an urgency and an intensity in that question that like stuck with me. And that actually gave birth to, it was just a couple months later when I joined RGI, the Rural Grocery Initiative team, to lead the effort to build the Rural Grocery Transition Specialist program. We started in August of 2022. We did the pilot in the spring of 23, and we launched with our first official cohort that fall. And that course includes Grocery Transition Psychology 101, where I teach the answer to why they don't want to face it. And that answer of why they don't want to face it, and like the whole premise of Grocery Transition Psychology 101, like it was born of emotional intelligence. It was born of my deep dive into spirituality and emotions and what our emotions even are. It was born of my own willingness to tap into the grief that I myself had been holding, that I was in my own denial and not wanting to face it. Um, it opened up a whole perspective inside of myself. My spirituality did, as far as like what I was able to see in my own inner world. And it was through that inner spiritual growth, that inner development of my inner world, that as I lived with the question of why they don't want to face it for months, like eventually it clicked that, like, wow, the first stage of grief is not wanting to face it. It's denial. It's pretending like it doesn't exist. And that became the basis of the rural grocery, the rural transition specialist program. And that program grew into the impetus of, like, okay, so now that we understand like how to actually help an owner through that process, how do we scale such that we can actually surf the wave of the silver tsunami? 2.9 million businesses that are either going to survive or not through the transition of their owner aging out of owning that business, right? Like there's a very real realness in the business succession community that says like every single owner will exit their business one way or another. So this work of helping people face the unfaceable, right? Like the understanding, the human compassion that it is to understand that business owners are actually humans. And so sometimes when we think we're working on a business problem, we're actually working on a human problem. And so the Rural Transition Academy, it takes all of this. It takes my grocery background, it takes my software background, it takes my project management background, it takes my entrepreneurship background, but it also takes my spirituality. It also takes my emotional intelligence. It takes my understanding of my own inner world that helps me to understand others. Like it takes my self awareness, it takes my ambition, it takes my hunger for making a positive impact in this world. It takes my ambition and my self belief for believing that I can, right? Even if right now that's a little bit more hypothetical. you know? I trust that I can because while I have never climbed this specific mountain, because nobody's ever climbed this specific mountain before, right? Like Rural Transition Academy doesn't exist. So founding it is a journey that I'm taking that no one has ever taken before, including me. So I've never climbed this mountain, but I have mountain climbing experience. And it lets me have reasonable certainty that I can improvise my way through this journey to a successful outcome with minimal risk, loss, or mistake. Not that there will be none of those things. There will be mistakes, there will be losses, there will be sacrifices, there will be all of that. But also I believe in my experience. I believe in my ability to set my sights on a destination and to reverse engineer that destination into a series of steps. And whether I think it'll take me 3 hours, 30 days, 30 years to get to that destination, it's still just a series of steps. It's still just a process. It's literally just putting one foot in front of the other and trusting that if you don't stop, you're unstoppable. So, how many leaders does it take to surf the silver tsunami? A lot. And should we surf it? I don't know about you. I know I have to. And do we want to surf it? Heck yeah. So far since like February, March, when this is like really taken off and like been coming together, like it's the end of July now. Um, this has been the single most exhilarating ride of my life, and it's barely started. And so part of wanting to speak about this journey on my Carly Wharton channel here. Um, Part of that is, again, this video diary aspect of being able to look back at this version of me right now has so much faith and so much belief and so much like what I would call like energetic certainty and has so little tangible proof of any of it. And she is putting herself out there. She is being the first to believe, she's making noise about her vision, about this thing that her imagination has showed her is real and possible. And her past life, like not necessarily like past lives, but like the experience that I have in my own past that like it's added up into being able to take this shot at founding this thing and reversing the erosion of rural food access, right? Like setting a target that is that large and ambitious and believing with reasonable energetic certainty that on a long enough time horizon, I'll get there. Like it may not be in 3 years, but give me 30 and it'll really look like I've been doing something. Um, like that. Like a coupling of my experience and a belief that standing at the top of that mountain is 110% worth it. And so, in my mind, Rural Transition Academy is a place where leaders can congregate, not necessarily where we give you all the answers, but a community where we can work on this together. Because truly, the size and scale of what it is that's happening, this transformation through our economy, it's bigger than any one person is ever going to be able to really put a dent in. And so, Rural Transition Academy, again, it's a place for leaders to congregate, to put our heads together, to share resources, to not reinvent the wheel, to be able to not necessarily all have the same mission, but to be doing our individual piece, our part, and to be working in tandem, cooperation, collaboration as often as possible so that we can have those gains of synergy and amplification that comes from knowing that our hearts are in the right place and amplifying each other to believe in ourselves, to do something real about something real, So where I'm at in my process right now, it's really interesting because I am going after multiple fellowships. One of those fellowship applications got submitted in April of 26 and was supposed to be announced during June of 26. And on like the literal last day at the like last minute of June of 26, they come out and they say like, actually, we're going to announce it by July, by the end of July. Okay. Okay. So if I'm not there in 5 minutes, just wait longer. So I've been waiting longer. So now we're at July 25th of 2026. And, like I don't know if the announcement of the fellowship is going to be here by the end of July or if there will be an announcement saying the announcement is coming later. Whatever it is, it'll be what it needs to be. And the process is right on time. I have no doubt about that. But that one is a research fellowship where I proposed basically doing a post-mortem on all of the transitions that happened in Kansas and Western Missouri during 2025 and looking at the successful ones and what made them successful, the unsuccessful ones, meaning that the store closed rather than transition to new ownership, looking for patterns and trends between those different subsets of transitions and using those patterns to reverse engineer preventative medicine that not only would help us be better and more effective at supporting grocers through their transition process and getting a better outcome, aka just the outcome that they actually want, um, but also preventative medicine, preventative mindsets that we can teach to existing owners and package and position in the language of an existing grocer to kind of plant those seeds for stronger roots that, the stronger your roots, the stronger your future. So as much as we can pour into existing grocers to help them stabilize themselves gives them the best shot at a successful transition whenever they come to that crossroads. So I think there's a lot of value to be gained by studying the transitions that happened and learning from them as best we can. And basically I've come to the conclusion that with or without that money, funding that research, a version of that research will happen regardless. And so it would be awesome if they would drop a pile of cash on me to support my time to do that. But also, the information has value all by itself. And I know that that value, that information can be put to work and can create its own value. So without the upfront cash, I believe it's still worth my time. So there's that fellowship that we'll be finding out about soon. Probably the most next milestone at this time is filing for my LLC, like actually establishing this business as its own public entity, kind of cutting the umbilical cord, so to speak, and like giving it a life of its own out in the public without me attached to it as its face, kind of giving it its own two legs, and like it's going to start standing on its own as, the entity is actually formed, the website goes up, all of that. It'll be ruraltransitionacademy.com when it's ready. It may already be ready. I don't know. At the time I'm recording this, is definitely not, but a lot is changing really quickly. So it could totally be up by the time you're watching this. And beyond that, there is another fellowship that the application for that fellowship is due in August of 26. And they are picking finalists in like September, October of 26, and then announcing who actually got the fellowship in November of 26. And then they start programming for the fellows right around that time. So that one is quite a bit more money, and it is a 3-year fellowship, where this other one that I talked about, the research project, is only a 1-year fellowship. So all of that is just right now. And I also have a feeling that there are other revenue streams coming. Oh my gosh, there's deer just running all out in front of my windows. There's other revenue streams that are coming to inject the cash that this business needs, because Rural Transition Academy wants to be a thing. So the money is inevitable and unstoppable, because this life force wants to exist. And so the journey of the money clicking into place and the stakeholders clicking into place and the team, right? Like I have one other team member right now. And so like we've split one cell into two cells. And again, how many leaders does it take? It takes a lot. So the team itself will grow. And I want this to be a space where I can kind of give that window into the journey of founding this thing, because it is inevitable. It is inevitable. And having a front row seat to it has been one of the most exhilarating rides of my life so far. And I want to share that. And I want to also be a space where people can learn about what we're doing and where where we're coming from with what we're doing, like when we're dealing with something this large of an undertaking, as in reversing the erosion of rural food access, prioritization becomes key. And it'll look for quite a while like we're not doing much, but we're preparing the soil. We're readying the groundwork, we're laying the foundation. And if we want to build anything that's going to stand the test of time, the foundation matters a lot. And so, this process, it's not an overnight thing. It will take time. And I personally love storytelling. So I love to tell the story of like, how did we get here, and where are we now, and where are we trying to go, and like, the visions that keep us moving forward. So if there's any questions that you have about what I've shared here so far, feel free to leave me a comment. I'd be happy to speak to that in a future video. Until next time, I am going to keep embracing the process, keep believing in this direction that I can feel wants to be a thing, that wants to exist. I'm going to keep diving deep inside of myself and finding my why, right? To allow the nuclear material to continue to infuse supernatural powers into my why, because that is my fuel. And if we are going to work on a multi-decade timeline, we need a lot of fuel to be able to surf this wave, to be able to not just be crushed by the wave, but to surf the wave, to be exhilarated by the transformation that is sweeping our world right now. And again, I go back to like this was inevitable as a natural next piece of best case scenario. The fact that we're getting to solve this problem at all is such a privilege and such an honor. So to be part of the solution to the silver tsunami, so freaking cool. And to get to make Rural Transition Academy a place for leaders to congregate and talk about such things. So freaking cool. So if that's you, I'd also love it if you'd say hi in the comments. Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Carly. It's so cool that you're here. I'll be back soon. Until then, you take real good care, and so will I.